how to strum with just using your fingers when you don't have a plectrum with you. Sometimes you don't have the tools, so you can't be picky. But this, as a technique, might just come in handy. The first thing we want to understand is how our hand moves when it's completely relaxed, and then take as much of this natural movement as possible and use that when we're strumming. We want to get rid of as much controlled movement as possible and put position first so that the natural movement comes forward and gets us the result that we want. The movement we want to be using is the same as if you just want to shake out your hand. We just want a slightly more controlled and accurate version of this. How this works is you hang your hand down. You'll see that makes your fingers slightly straighten even though they're relaxed. And then from further back in our arm, we shake side to side. We're not controlling from the wrist moving. We're moving our arm backwards and forwards, and our relaxed hand at the front then gets the whip motion we want for strumming. The more we deviate from this, the harder it'll be to keep our hand relaxed, because deviation from this means we're using muscles to pull in different directions. The more muscles we have engaged, the slower we're going to be, because we're trying to rely more on muscular control rather than position, and position is the main one we want to be leaning into. When talking about position, the main position we want to talk about is the height our hand is away from the guitar strings. When our hand's hanging, you can see the length from the back of my wrist down to the fingertip. That is how far you want to be away from the strings. If your hand is too low, you're going to start hitting the back of your cuticle on the strings. This is going to really hurt, swell up over time. We want your hand high enough so it's just the back of your nail that's hitting the string and nothing else. This is entirely governed by the height your hand is away from the strings. Now we've got our height away from the strings and we know that shape movement that we want in our hand. What are we making contact with a downstroke and an upstroke? Let's get into that part. When doing a downstroke, we're going to be hitting with the back of our nails. I have my middle finger, my ring finger that are going to be hitting on the way down. That is back of the nails. Make sure you don't hit your cuticle. That's going to start getting sore. On the way back up, you want your thumbnail, the back of your thumbnail, dragging back up. Now, when we look at the guitar this way, when your hand is moving down, your hand will tilt slightly down to play the strings. This is going to take your thumb away from the strings, but your fingers are going to be right there, back of the nail, to glide across the strings. When coming back up, your hand will turn around and change angle to come back up, and this is what's going to get the back of your thumb, the nail of your thumb, playing the strings on the way back up. This sway back and forth is going to be completely natural in the movement of the hand, meaning we don't need to deviate away from that handshake that we use to play the strings. So let's show this in practice so you can see what I'm talking about. On the way down, I have my finger, back of my fingernails, middle finger and my ring finger. On the way back up, I play with the thumb, dragging back up. This is then led from the forearm with a really relaxed hand that just leads like a whip as I play. And you can see I'm not changing anything in my hand shape. It's saying completely relax because I'm high enough away from the strings and I've got everything in position. I can keep the exact same movement. So now, quick recap on the technique. Your hand is high enough away from the strings that you can just shake your hand and get your fingers on the way down, thumb on the way up without changing our position. Great, that's beginning to work for you. But what are the advantages or disadvantages in this way of playing to using a plectrum when you're strumming? A plectrum is going to have a slightly crisper sound when you're playing. So if I cover the strings and you have a listen to the plectrum sound, you get that crisper sound and that more attack when you're strumming. Now let's compare them back to back. Plectrum. Fingers. Back to plectrum. Back to fingers. There's a subtle difference, but you can hear the plectrum has that extra bit of high frequency in the sound with that extra bit of attack. The fingers, on the other hand, get a warmer, rounder sound that might be appropriate for other types of music. This is going to be a tonal change that you can pick down to the style that you're playing and the type of sound that you want. If you're playing a type of music that swaps between some finger picking and some strumming, then maybe using your fingers to strum is going to be a much better idea, because you don't need to then swap between the two. That can take, of course, swap over time with picking up your pick. If, on the other hand, you're playing something with more electric guitar style melodies that you want to be using a plectrum for, and that then moves into some strumming, of course, that'll be more appropriate to do both of them using a pick. On nylon string guitar, a good example could be this piece is a great example of melodies that are great to play with a pick, and then strumming patterns you can add to that fit well together using a plectrum for both techniques. On a personal note, I often like strumming with my fingers instead of a pick because I use a fair bit of extra flamenco techniques, like where you use the different fingers strumming up and down to get a really fast triplet in your playing. This you can't do as easily with a plectrum, so I like doing it with my fingers. Also, without holding a plectrum, your hand can be more relaxed. You're not trying to pinch in with a plectrum. Now, of course, when using a plectrum, you want to stay as relaxed as possible, but there'll always be an underlying bit of tension needed to hold the plectrum, hold the pick. When you're strumming without one, there's absolutely no tension needed. You can keep your hand far more relaxed. All in all, it's great to have both techniques in your toolbox ready to use for when it's appropriate for the music that you're playing. So have a go at doing strumming using your fingers instead of using a pick and see how it feels. I'd love to hear in the comments below if you've used this before, if you haven't, how you're finding learning this and getting on with the idea. Also, if you have any other video ideas you'd love to see me cover, let me know what they are. I love hearing them, getting the videos out ready for you to level up your guitar playing. And if you want to check out a video on how to properly use a pick, check this one out here where I break down some of the positions, the movements. There'll be a bunch of things in there that you probably haven't heard of before. I'll see you in there.